Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the episode 2 of season 2 of the American Speed podcast. I am your host, Anthony Doria. Apologies for the delay. We've had a lot of obligations in my life with school and family, but a new episode is back, and I'm glad to present it. So in this episode, we will be going over F1 and NASCAR, because in this podcast, we go over the two top motorsports in the world in F1 and NASCAR. So for NASCAR, we will be talking about the Talladega race, any chaotics there in the playoff standings that will be addressed with it. And also, we'll be discussing the recent move with the wish that a lot of NASCAR fans have been asking for since the next gen got released. And then for F1, we'll be talking about the United States Grand Prix, just the chaoticness of the sprint race of that weekend. And then we'll just go over the general race in general, and also very sad news about who got eliminated from the championship fight. So first off, we will start with NASCAR. So if you're new to this podcast, I added NASCAR this year. It was originally just F1 last year, but I really wanted to kind of expand the audience and add more, because NASCAR is my first love. I kind of grew out of it, got into F1 a lot, really like late in high school. But I want to get back into NASCAR, and I definitely have. But the first thing we'll be talking about today is that NASCAR has announced that in 2026, some NASCAR tracks will be increased from 670 horsepower to 750. So they announced a couple weeks ago that the horsepower for the Cup Series events at road courses and oval tracks that are less than 1.5 miles in length will increase to 750 horsepower in the 2026 season. Now, this was revealed by the NASCAR president of Steve O'Donnell on the week's edition of the Dale Jr. Download. That was on that week's edition. And it will be an increase from the baseline that they've had since the next-gen car got released in 2022. And really, why this move came was just because it was really just the drivers themselves, industry, and the fans especially, but mostly a lot of the fans and drivers just didn't like it. So that's kind of why they are doing that, and because they think a power boost would help on the next-gen platform, obviously, as I just stated, which got released in 2022. It is expected to place a greater premium on the throttle control, while also incentivizing tire management and creating more passing opportunities with varying on and off throttle times. So it's a start. And then so here are the tracks. So as I just stated, it will be at road courses and ovals that are less than 1.5 miles, because these are the tracks people are like aren't really the best ones. Because if you ask people, super speedways and 1.5 miles are actually probably fine. Like, they're the same racing. I mean, super speedway racing hasn't really changed. It's still good. I don't think people hate that. But it's really because, and it's not like they're always the most entertaining. Those are always races that definitely, but it seemed like they were just too slow and they couldn't really do anything. And as for short tracks, everyone says that the next gen package just really ruined short track racing and they haven't been able to fix it. So NASCAR is doing this in really a hope to do that. So here are the tracks. So the tracks that will have 750 horsepower will be the road courses, which will be Circuit of the Americas, Watkins Glen, the new San Diego track, Sonoma, and the Charlotte Roval. And here are the ovals. You can probably guess it is Bowman Gray, Phoenix, Darlington, Martinsville, Bristol, Dover, Nashville, North Wilkesboro, Iowa, Richmond, New Hampshire, Worldwide Technology Raceway. So those are the tracks. Now, this got announced, and people were mostly happy. I think the consensus from, what I read online was really like, it's a start. Like, I don't think we should have expected NASCAR to go to, 900, in the first step. Like, I knew they weren't going to do that. But people are, at least somewhat content, because NASCAR did something. I guess because they just though NASCAR doesn't listen to anybody and they just do what they want. So at least they did something. They tried to take a step to try to increase the racing. So the common belief was, okay, it's a start. It's not really, we still want to go further, but we can build off this. This is something to build off of. Obviously, there are other problems. Like, is this going to solve every problem? I mean, no. I mean, the race only will get better because it is more horsepower, which obviously will increase more speed. But the thing was, I actually looked at this. 670 to 750 horsepower, that is a 10% increase in power. So the cars are going to be faster, especially in a straight line. And think about it, when were road courses and short tracks actually entertaining? I mean, Martinsville with the high horsepower especially, a lot of these tracks were better with a lot of the horsepower. I mean, road courses actually used to be pretty exciting back in the day. I mean, that 2012 finish at Watkins Glen, that's like one of the best finishes in NASCAR history. Like, that's what we want to see. We want to see that kind of stuff again. And that's when the cars were faster. And it incentivizes more because think about it, tire management, which can increase a lot more of racing. So I think this is a good thing, and it's a good step. I do think there should be more done. I don't think this will be the last step they do. But it definitely is something. So, the officials, they also indicated that there will be a rules configuration and competition update, even in 2026, which would come in the offseason. That's likely due to this horsepower because they're probably going to change stuff. And really, in the last 2 seasons, NASCAR have really worked with Goodyear to improve the racing. I mean, they've tried softer tires that promote wear and creating more chances. In tire management, passing opportunities, they really have tried that. It promises to add more with more power, also contributing to advanced tire fall-off. So this is something. Introducing that higher horsepower number has been closely communicated with a lot of the NASCAR officials, engine builders, and manufacturers in a series of weekly meetings this year. And the other good thing is, we get this early because 5 of the first 8 races on the 2026 Cup Series schedule will be using this new 750 horsepower package. It will be an early test and a glimpse of what it could be with larger ovals, and really just seeing if they're going to increase any more and if they will on super speedways and mile and a halves. That is definitely the good thing I like too. Now, people always said that they had a lot of communications, but the main thing is the NASCAR officials, the engine builders, and teams, they arrived at 750 horsepower as kind of like, like the middle ground, the happy medium, you could say. It will take place by using a larger tapered spacer on top of the engine's intake manifold, which will improve the engine airflow and the overall power. Achieving an even higher horsepower number would potentially compromise reliability and would require more development and cost. So, but here is what, really interesting quote, here's what Roush Yates Engines, the CEO Doug Yates said. He said, quote, if we want to increase the power from 670 horsepower to about 750 horsepower, that probably wouldn't be much of a change for us today, end quote. But then he said, but to go back to those 900 horsepower engines, that would be quite the project and would definitely decrease the life of the engine. Because they do want to do it. They want to increase power, but also what we got to consider because it could cost engines a lot, and these next-gen engines are very intricate. And we have to kind of protect that as well. We can't just go to 900. So, we have to start slow and to see what we can do and how to get this. And he said... And they said that 750 was a number that everyone felt was comfortable that they could actually get it without having to redesign really anything about it. This was the highest they could go without having to really have to change anything. So this 750 at this point is probably as high as they're going to go. I don't really know how much higher they're going to go. They likely will, and they probably will do something with super speedways. But I do think at this point, we're just going to see it for now. But it's going to be early year next year, so we can really see what this package can do. And I'm really excited for it. I think a lot of NASCAR fans are excited for it because, this is a really great start for a lot of people. And it's showing that NASCAR is actually taking initiative. They're taking a strive to really do this and to get the racing better. There's other problems that got to be fixed, but this is one of them. Could at least try to see it and stop any other damage as well. So I think it'll be good. So we'll see what happens with that. So now we're going to get into the Talladega race itself, which just happened. And here's the thing. You know, the playoff race at Talladega, you know that this is usually always a race that has a lot of implications on it. The most chaotic track in all of NASCAR. And you add the playoffs to that, whew, boy, oh boy, does it get more hectic. Surprisingly, actually a pretty peaceful race. So we start off here. It was pretty much clean until lap 50. Until lap 52. I guess this was the so-called big one, and it happened because Noah Gragson in the 4, he was leading at the time of this, was getting pushed by Eric Jones. He got clipped, runs in AJ Allmendinger, and they both go into the wall. Collected many cars. I believe 5 cars did not finish because of this crash. And that was really the big one. There was not really any other crash after this. Surprisingly, it feels like the fall race. I don't know what it is, but the last couple of years, the fall race hasn't really produced like that big crash that we used to see. Because I remember last year it wasn't really anything either. The other major thing that happened was on 111 when Shane Van Gisbergen spun in the pit lane, and he got stuck. And then and somehow didn't collect anybody, which I'm honestly shocked that happened, to be honest. And so then that was kind of later, but there really just wasn't a lot of else to be. It's just kind of crazy how there just wasn't. Because a lot of the time the fans, that's what the fans really want. They really want, the big one, but they just often don't get it. But we did get one other caution. Now, this was on lap 26. Joey Logano was leading. Now, at the time of this, there was 26 to go. He currently was in the round of 8. I don't think he was in a must win at this point. I don't know how close he was. I don't believe he was in a must win this race. I think he at least needed a good finish, and a win, he probably needed a win. He was in a must-win situation. Close to it. At the time, he was leading. But then, on that same lap, we get a caution, and it's because of Cody Ware. Now, I went back and I watched kind of his onboard, and yeah, he blew an engine. The car just blew up, and he just couldn't get it restarted, and that called a caution. Seems like that man just can't catch a break. I don't know what it is. It feels like a lot of the time the DNFs aren't even him. And it just doesn't make sense to me. But, so now Joey Logano's in a bad spot, because he has the lead. He was in the lead, so he does have the lead still, but now people are pitting. And at this point, if you pit, you're good. If you get the fuel here, you'll be good to finish. So they all pit, and they get restarted. Joey Logano lost the lead to Blaney. Now, actually, this is actually a good time to mention this. Both Penske teammates needed a win. Both Blaney and Logano were behind the cut line going into this. They need good finishes. One win can put them in. And we give it 14 to go. At this point, there's 30 cars still running. But then you see Logano, he kind of fades back. He's still in 6th, though. He still is in a good situation. But he does fade back a bit. So now, going to lap 13, Logano was in 5th place. So Larson was 2nd, Blaney was 3rd, Logano 5th, and Byron 8th. At this point, with 13 laps to go, it was Hamlin, Larson who leading. He would have advanced, Bell, and Chase Briscoe. Blaney and Logano were both 23 points behind the cut line, which, if the race ended now, that wouldn't necessarily be a must-win situation. It's not like it's 40 points, but they would have probably needed a lot to go right. Because the thing about a must-win is that 23 points, like, you don't necessarily... in case you're wondering, what is a must-win? Essentially what that means is that in the playoffs, if you win, you advance. If you're in the round and you win in that round, you will advance automatically. What that means is that typically, like in like the last race or two, if you're so far behind that it wins the only way you can get it. Because the thing is, it's 23 points. Like that does not necessarily mean you have to win. Because, I mean, you would need a lot to go right, obviously. But a win is not the only way you could get in. It is possible to do that. See, but then you look at Elliott at this point, he was 58 points behind. See, like, that is a must-win. That he would need to win that race to get in. Because remember, there's 4 spots, but 3 guys win. So a win would put him in no matter what. See, that is guaranteed. So what I mean by that, a win is probably necessary, but there are other ways that they could get in. That's what I'm trying to say here. So then we go to 11 laps to go. Logano's out of the top 10. Blaney isn't now. Now it's 29 and 32 points behind. And they need to try to get up to the front to at least try to limit as much damage as they can. One of them's got to win or at least try to get very high to somewhat limit the damage. But then they just keep falling back. Then we get 2 laps to go. Logano is in the back. You can barely see him. Now it's 38 and 39. They were 23 points back like 10 laps ago. And now they're 38 and 39 points behind. That just sounds crazy. But I want to pay attention to this. So right now, there are 4 guys. 4 playoff drivers are in the top 10 at this moment, which was William Byron. He's in 3rd place. Kyle Larson is in 5th. Briscoe's in 7th. And Bell is in 8th place. What's kind of funny, though, is that 3 of them are in the playoffs right now. The only one that wasn't at this moment was Byron. He's 14 points behind. So he's not in a horrible position. So Briscoe is 40 points out of Byron. So what that would mean is that for the next race, if it were like this, that would mean that Byron would have to outscore Briscoe by 14 points. He would have to finish 14 points ahead of Briscoe to advance. But then we would get more, as we would get a caution with 2 laps to go. And it was Chris Buescher who, in fact, was actually leading at the time, and it was Byron who wrecked him. Remember, there's 2 laps to go, and there's no overtime line. So 2 laps to go. So what that would mean is that, so then it goes to NASCAR overtime. So how that works. So let's say there's 2 laps to go in a race and a caution occurs. The rule is that the caution, if the drivers get back to the line, so if the leader takes the white flag and a caution were to come out, so let's say this was on the final lap and this crash happened. If there was a flag thrown, if a caution was thrown, the race would end. It would be frozen the field would be frozen at the exact spot. So they would go back and see what the running order was when the caution was thrown, and that would be the finishing order. But since there are 2 laps to go and they did not reach the white flag, they will have to do more laps. It's just called NASCAR overtime. There's been a lot of iterations. I know they did an overtime line, which would have been kind of on the backstretch, but now they just do, you have to get back to the white flag. And since they did not, we'll go to NASCAR overtime. So that's giving, Logano and Byron maybe a bit of a lifeline. A bit of a lifeline because the field's going to reset. It's going to bunch back up. It's somewhat of a chance to try to make up ground as much as possible. So you can kind of see what this is. And the thing with Talladega is that it's not always uncommon to have a lot of overtimes. It's definitely not uncommon. Because Talladega produces big ones, and we only had a mini one so far. So, overtime starts. Blaney's in 24th, Logano's in 26th. Now, Hamlin is in 25th, but he's already in the playoffs. He won last week. He's already in the playoffs, so he does not really need to worry. So, yeah, they have a lot of ground to do. They're probably not going to win, but they got to try to move up the field to be in just any better spot than they were. So then we get onto the final lap. As we go to the backstretch, Larson's leading, Wallace is in second, Byron third, Briscoe fourth. So then Briscoe pushes Bubba to the lead. Bubba was actually eliminated last round, just so you know. Larson gets pushed out of the groove, has to go all the way back. And then Briscoe gets a run on Bubba and gets to the lead. But remember, it's not finished because there's a lot of race to go. They race back. Byron gets wrecked right before the finish line, but Briscoe has enough ground and he wins the race. So then Briscoe was first, Bell was eighth. So Logano was 16th, so Logano finished 16th, so he was able to somewhat salvage his race. But he's definitely not a good spot. Also, shout out to Casey Mears in the MBM car for finishing in top 20. Good race for him. Blaney was 23rd. So, yeah, their teammates are pretty far behind now. And if we go to the standings right now, there are 2 spots available. Right now, Chase Briscoe and Denny Hamlin are locked in. And the other 2 on points at this moment is Christopher Bell and Kyle Larson. They are 36 and 37 points to the good. So the way this would work, so essentially every single driver below the cut line has to win. Yeah, Elliott is. He's 62 points behind. Blaney's 47, Logano's 38, Byron's 36. But the thing was, I saw this on social media, and it's the fact that Chase Elliott's actually been really good at Martinsville. I wouldn't count him out. But essentially, as you can guess, every driver below the cut line would have to win this race to move on. So it's not going to be easy. Because then if that happens, it's going to come, because think about it, then if it comes down to that, Bell only has a 1-point lead on Kyle Larson. So if someone else won, it'd be a pretty interesting battle to see what happens between Larson and Bell, because they only have 1 point separating them. So that'd be very interesting to see how that will play out. I definitely want to see that. We'll have to see. Martinsville could be chaotic. We've seen it in the past with the playoffs. We have seen it. There could be dramatics. I mean, this is the track that we saw a wall ride happen a couple years ago. So we will have to see what happens. So now we will get into the F1 segments. First off, we'll be going over the sprint race recap. U.S. Grand Prix has been a track that usually has been very good. A lot of F1 fans like it. It recently got extended to, I believe, 2036. It's been one of the most popular tracks. A track, I love to watch races. It usually produces really good racing. We get to the sprint race, and it didn't really take long to get a lot of action. So we go to the sprint, and the thing about turn 1 in Austin, it's a big turn and it's uphill. And typically there's always something. Maybe it's the first lap, but at one point every race there typically is something, a collision that occurs. This one just so happened to occur on the first lap. So Hulkenberg, who, shout out to him, qualified 4th for this in the Sauber. but he gets dive bombed by the Aston Martin. He's in the middle, but he then gets cut off by one of the McLarens, who, because of that, clips, guess what? The other one. Yes, you heard that correct. So you can definitely already tell it's a crazy start. Because both McLarens are fighting for the championship, and they both just got taken out on lap 1 of the sprint, and they can't gain points. So then, so Hülkenberg got, I believe it was Piastri he got into, then he clipped Norris, and they're both out before the race really even got started. And it was actually Lando that he got into. But then both the McLarens get damaged. They can't continue. And the funny thing is, Yuki Tsunoda, if you go to the race highlights, he was in 18th when this started. When the sprint started, he got up to 7th because of this. I mean, that's called taking advantage of what you can get. So, great job by him there. All the Ferraris do avoid, so everyone else avoids it. So then Norris, Alonso, and Piastri are out because, Alonso was the other Aston Martin. He got tagged as well. So Verstappen's still in the lead. The Ferraris move up to 4th and 5th. And the rest of the sprint continues. Now Max isn't pulling away, as in. And a couple laps later, after the race starts, George Russell pretty much attempts the move that Lando Norris attempted last year at the United States Grand Prix. And tries to dive bomb him into the really slow left turn that goes into Sector 3. But Max avoids it, goes back on track. Now, there was no penalties because he got forced off there. And he did have the lead. And he did not go off himself, so that's kind of why there's nothing there. But then there would be something else. And to probably a lot of F1 fans, they probably thought same old because it was Lance Stroll, who then would cause 2 more cars to go out. This was on lap 16 with about a couple laps to go. Tries a dive bomb on Esteban Ocon. He locks his brakes and then gets into him. They both are now out. So the race ends under a safety car. Only 15 cars finished the sprint. 5 cars DNF'd in 19 laps. You don't see that often. So you would have thought that it would have maybe given Russell a chance to pass him, but there just was not enough laps left for the race to continue. Would have been interesting to see if Russell could have actually made a run at Verstappen with a couple laps. Because he wasn't really falling back really fast either. So, yeah, safe to say, very chaotic sprint. So the main question is, will the race be the same? Because there's way more laps. And considering all that happened in 19, might be a lot more. So So turn 1 happens. It is very peaceful. There are nothing major happens. They all make it through cleanly. But this race had a lot. The only major thing that happened was Albon. He did spin a bit later in the lap, but it was a slight one. Really nothing else major happened on lap 1. So fast forward. It took until lap 7 or something to happen as Carlos Sainz would DNF as he would make a dive bomb on one of the Mercedes on Kimi Antonelli, who'd be in the gravel. Now, only Albon was out. Antonelli was able to keep going. So Leclerc's in second. He's 5 seconds behind Verstappen. Doesn't seem like he's going to do anything. But then he probably puts up the defense of his life against Lando Norris. Held him off for 5 to 6 laps. He held him off. And in a faster car, and we've seen Leclerc, especially when he battled Verstappen a lot in 2022, like we saw that his defense can be very good. And he showed it there, but unfortunately, and he couldn't really keep up. He was on the softs, couldn't really keep up with Lando. And then there'd be more involving a Haas. This time, it's Behrman, who was trying to get an overtake in kind of the beginning of Sector 3, which is kind of that sharp right, and then like the double left chicane that kind of goes into the last part of the track. He tried to get by Yuki. He tried to do like a surprise move and kind of like into the first left, go underneath him. But Yuki doesn't really know he's doing that, cuts him off. Behrman goes in the grass, spins. Sonoda somehow doesn't get hit in any of this. Yeah, like barely missed getting touched, but thankfully he spun because Behrman spun away from him. Unfortunately, Leclerc would get passed again. Verstappen wins, and Verstappen dominated the entire weekend. And everybody's like, Verstappen's now a title favorite again. It's really crazy to think about that. Because he was kind of a guy that generally seemed like he'd be in it, but now he's not that far behind. And it seems like the McLarens are kind of fading back a bit. And we know Verstappen has won 4 straight. We thought this was the year that he would finally end. But he's not making it easy. He's going to go to the end. So after this weekend, there are only 4 drivers who are eligible for the championship, which is both McLaren, Piastri, and Norris, Verstappen, and George Russell. Charles Leclerc has officially been eliminated. The funny thing about it was after the last race, he still was in it, and he went on Instagram. He commented, "Let's go, baby," because he was still in it. And then everybody was like, "Who's gonna tell him?" Because like we all knew he wasn't gonna win it. We all knew that. I thought he was still in it because he outscored McLaren. I thought he was because he scored more than first place, so I thought he would still be in it because he got more the entire weekend. But unfortunately, he does not have enough, and he is eliminated. It really sucks because I've talked about this. I talked about it a couple times last year. I want Leclerc to win one so bad. We all want him to win one. But everybody's like, he's not going to do it with Ferrari. Because, like, Ferrari has given, like, beside 2020, they haven't given him, like, horrible cars. They've given him competitive cars that he's been able to fight. He's gotten wins with these cars. It's not that they just give him horrible cars to work with. They just don't give him a car that's good enough. Because we all know it's not Leclerc. He is talented. We all know he is not his problem. I mean, obviously he makes mistakes, but I mean, every driver makes a mistake at some point. They're not perfect. It's just tough to consider. I really want to win one, but we'll have to see. But this is going to be an interesting finish to the season. And I'm really excited for it. So Max Verstappen just dominates the weekend. And it's going to be a really interesting finish because we thought he was out of it, but it turns out he's just getting started. We're going to have to see what happens because it's going to be crazy. But anyway, that will do it